and scores! Great move by Davies. Well, this would be something. Oh! Ausgezeichnet! Brian White chips. It'll make it!
Welcome back to another episode of Caps Cast presented by Whitecaps Fan TV. My name is Matt, and as always, joined by my co-host Damien.
Good night,
and we are looking at a very, 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 very frustrating week.
Yeah, frustrating. It was honestly quite painful to be in the stadium, even watching that performance, I think.
And I know we said, oh, we'll come back on Friday after the Pumas game to like kind of review it, but I was in no proper state to say things without everyone turning against me.
Yeah, I think so, actually. Yeah, it was, I don't know. It was, I think, the worst performance of the season.
I'd even go like one further. I mean, I was very emotional, I guess, when I said it, but I was like, that was the worst fucking game since COVID when we were walking out of the stadium. That's like how pissed off I was as a whole.
Yeah, it was, considering that we were favorites going in, like betting favorites going into the game. Yeah, I don't know what happened. It was like they didn't turn up. I don't know. It was very, very disappointing, and yeah, a bit disheartening to even watch the game. Yeah, I think.
All right, so let's dive headfirst on into this. So obviously, as we've alluded to, we got drawn against Pumas at BC Place on a Wednesday night game, which Wednesday nights are always like a bit smaller of a crowd. And what's really interesting about this particular match is we didn't know about it until, what was it, like Sunday morning, maybe even Monday.
Yeah.
Which I know it's knockout football. We're in a tournament, but the turnaround was very, 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 very quick.
Yeah.
Yes.
I think I do have a few things, Matt, to say about the whole scheduling of the Leagues Cup, but I think I'll save that until after we've dissected the game and things first.
Okay, so let's dive into this. First things first, we walk to the stadium, and it's entirely, what is it? Their home colors are blue and gold, right?
Yeah,
like dark blue. It's just flooded with Pumas fans. So I was like, okay, kind of like what we predicted, right? It's like we were sitting there being like, oh, you know, the League MX fans travel pretty heavy, especially with like a big team. And then we get to the stadium, which you would have thought we were there 4.5 hours early.
Yeah, it was. I've never seen the stadium so empty for a game. I mean, we've been going to the Whitecaps, for 10 years now as season ticket holders? Probably 14 years if you count the games that we went to sporadically before the season tickets. And that, for me, was very similar to when we first started going. And there wasn't really that much interest in the game, and there wasn't any draw. Shocking, really.
So I was kind of thinking about this randomly the other day when I knew we were kind of getting ready to come on about a podcast about this game. And I remember, I mean, I can't put a date on this, but let's go 2018, 2019. I remember the games you would get around 14, 15,000 people was generally the attendance. Then it kind of picked up, obviously near the end of the playoffs when we started pushing. Then obviously all sports leagues shut down for 2 years. The MLS was down for 2 years. And I feel like right now we're probably getting around 18, 19,000 per game. Wednesdays are always a bit of an asterisk just because it's Wednesday night. But the official attendance for this. So before I let you know the attendance, I saw on different groups that, oh, there's about 10,000 tickets sold. And I was like, nah, like that doesn't, no way.
Yeah,
Like,
that's hot shit, right?
do
There's
you
like you
financially make money with only 10,000 tickets sold? Like the amount of stewards, honest to the electricity, all the concession staff, like do you make money at 10,000 tickets? I was like, there's no way. Official attendance from the Whitecaps press release about the game was 9,691,
yeah,
which
like
is under half full. And to be honest, of those 9,691, I would say about 5,000 people were Pumas fans.
yeah, it was a weird experience being in there, I feel. And there was a time there in the first half where Berhalter goes over to take a corner, and the Pumas fans are generally located towards that end of the stadium, like not where the safe siders usually sit, the other side. So they're all over there, and they start like jeering and booing Berhalter. The sound that was coming from that side of the stadium was absolutely phenomenal. Like nothing I have ever heard in that stadium from an away supports traveling fans. Do you know what I mean? It was yeah, like wow,
And
impressive.
like, obviously, I understand the protest that went on in the league about the League's Cup. I know the Southsiders kind of had this alliance with the Seattle Sounders. I think it's the Emerald City supporters, along with the Portland Timber supporters, who kind of protested the game by not bringing in any of the tifo, any of the drums. Which I understand for fixture congestion that this was a stand that the Southsiders felt they needed to take, which is fine. But I think at one point you could have heard a pin drop in the stadium. And I want to credit to all the fans in the Southsiders that tried really, really hard to get something going. It just not didn't happen. And I read something a couple years ago. It was one of those like the Whitecaps sporadically put out those like quality time articles where they kind of sit down with a player. And the one thing I think it was Russell Tybert said was that like, when you're in the 80th minute, just kind of hearing the drums behind you gives you that little bit of oomph. And
Yeah,
we've preached across all of our episodes that when the Whitecaps have gone down, we never felt like their heads were hung, that they kind of always came out with that like body energy that said we're here to play.
resilience. Yeah,
But like that was just gone. And I'm not blaming the protests, but I'm kind of thinking that because of how loud the traveling fans were, it felt like an away game,
yeah,
which
I'd agree with that. Absolutely.
is a bit interesting. Um,
It has a
and
massive
that,
effect. Like having your support behind you in a stadium is huge. There was a game, just to go a little bit off subject here. There was a game a few years back. It was Barcelona and Frankfurt in the Europa League, and I think Barcelona had done the same thing. Or something stupid. They'd screwed up tickets for the home support, and it
yeah,
ended up that there were more Frankfurt fans in the stadium than
yeah,
Barcelona fans at the new camp. And
yeah,
Frankfurt beat Barcelona in the new camp.
yeah. I know
Having that
exactly.
much support behind you, cheering you on, shouting when things go bad, when the referee's not on your side, having all your fans behind you, giving the referee shit. When a player on the opposition's team does something stupid, having your fans scream at him and jeer him and just like fucking hate that guy. That's motivation to you. That gets your blood boiling. That gets you going.
That gives you that incentive to go in a bit harder on a tackle, run a little bit faster. But I mean, I'm not going to sit here and point fingers at like who is responsible for this. I understand the protest. It
No,
just
I understand
sucks.
too.
It
Yeah.
just sucks that we went out in that fashion where I was like, I was personally just like a little too emotional about it. And I was like, I can't go on a podcast
Yeah.
without letting this kind of go. And then I started to see as the League's Cup kind of progressed here, I think it's like the New England Revolution game is empty.
Yeah.
And it's just fixture congestion, maybe not giving fans enough time to rally. in order to like buy tickets, decide if they want to go, kind of make their plans.
Yeah.
Which sucks because I feel it's a really cool competition. It's a really good chance for us to get different looks at teams, play a different style of football, play a little bit different, experiment with things. I feel like the Whitecaps took advantage of experimenting in the group stages. But here we are. So that's kind of my rant about the start of the game.
Yeah.
And then let's go into it. So obviously we feel like it's an away game, but
Yeah. Yeah, well, the game starts obviously, and I feel like the Whitecaps looked very slow, lethargic, and going into that game when I saw the lineup and the subs bench, there was a bit of me that was quite optimistic about it. Like Ryan Gord was on the subs bench, the team that they'd put out looked pretty good. Unfortunately, Halbouni was out, and he'd had 2 solid games there, but he's had injury from the previous game, and there again, the 3-day recovery time obviously not enough. So yeah, like just no cohesion in the team. They looked a bit tired, I thought, and yeah, their first goal, like Pumas' first goal, came from mistakes. Was born from mistakes.
from Bjorn.
Bjorn Utvik, and it's honestly, it's quite sad to have to say that he was responsible because for the past 4, 5, 6 games, I really think he's been solid. And it wasn't just one time in this game that he fucked up. He, just before the goal, maybe about 10 minutes, he tried messing about with the ball at his feet and got caught on the ball. That, to me, should have served as a warning. If you are under pressure again after you've already been caught once, especially in the same half of the game, you oof that ball. Doesn't matter where you put it. Get it out of play. It doesn't matter. Get it away from the attacker. Don't sit with it at your feet, be tackled, and just let them score a very simple goal. Yeah, sorry. Shouldn't get so worked up, but here I am.
No, like I said, I think we have every right to be because like I prefaced this and thought this was the worst game since the return to MLS after COVID. Like
Yeah.
I genuinely think every player played terrible. And it's not,
Yeah.
I'm not sitting here pointing fingers and being like, you're responsible. I think as a collective whole, the team let the fans who did make it, they're down.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. Yeah.
Um,
And then, yeah, like so obviously the first half, like, basically goes by, nothing really happens, like, no real focal point. I think we did have one good opportunity there where I think it was Brian White
Brian
swings the
White.
ball in, and
No, he was on the end of it.
Levante Johnson got on the end of it.
Oh, right.
And it's when the keeper's moving back across his net. And to be fair to Johnson, I'm not overly keen on him as a player for the Whitecaps. I'm not. But to be fair, he did knock it back across from the way that the goalkeeper was coming. And the goalkeeper produced a very, very good save. But still, from that position, you're 5 yards out. The goalkeeper's going one way. You've got to score. For me, you have got to score there.
You have to finish.
So,
like he
yeah,
was, yeah.
there were a few moments where, yeah, we could have done something, but there weren't. I don't know. There were no passages of play where we looked like we were in control or anything. It was just a moment here or a moment there, and we're seeing in football that you cannot rely on moments. In occasional games, yeah, but you can't do it. And to rely on moments, you need players that are capable of producing moments, not Levante Johnson.
And one thing I do want to kind of highlight too is the build up to the first Pumas goal, which was in the 36th minute. Is I feel like we're used to seeing the South American teams come in and kind of dominate in our third. Like I feel like we've always seen this where we're always in our third. Basically, we have all 10 behind the ball. And were just trying to defend, and hit them on the counter. But I feel like the first half, we played predominantly in their third. Like, we had control, but we weren't doing anything with that control. We were playing sideways, back. We weren't breaking them down like we've seen them do in previous games.
Honestly, Matt, it's funny that you should mention that because so if you look at the whole game there, the Whitecaps are finished with 559 passes to Pumas's 383. But the thing is, like you said, if you look at the game, a lot of the Whitecaps passes were side to side or backwards.
Yeah.
There was no penetration at all.
Nobody was making runs.
No.
Nobody was putting balls in to force somebody to run. It was just flat.
Yeah.
Flat.
And to spend, like you said, so long in the opposition's half, but do nothing with the ball, especially against a big team like Pumas, it's not like we're playing somebody from the bottom of the MLS here. We're playing like one of Mexico's big teams. You've got to be, I don't know, you've got to be seizing and taking control and actually playing forward, being progressive with the ball. I understand that you've got to also show a bit of caution, but I don't know. It was just almost paying too much respect to Pumas because they are one of, as we said last week, the big four in Mexico.
And we're used to seeing a low possession number for the Whitecaps. Like, I think we've always laughed at this, been like, oh, we just won 1-0 by having 37% possession.
Yeah.
So we finished the game with 60% possession. And then in the second half alone, we had 67% possession.
Yeah,
and 331 passes in the second half, all probably which were sideways or back.
Yeah, like you need to, when you look at that, right, the possession there, and then especially in the second half where we had more. So going into the second half, Vanny could have changed the whole 11. Like, maybe not Tack, because Tack was doing all right. It was like saving a few here and there, but he could have honestly changed that whole team at halftime.
It's like,
I
listen,
thought that he might have done something.
he's like, listen, every player has a concussion. We need to use the concussion rule.
Honestly, like when he walked in, he should have been whacking him with a shoe on the back of the head, just being like, "You fucking moron." Do you know what I mean? Like proper Italian dad style. But yeah, I don't know. It could have changed. I feel like there should have been a substitution made for us at the halfway point to try
so much earlier
win the game back, and nothing was done. One person. Well, there was probably 3 people that I thought had very poor first halves, and I'd say Upvik was one, which, like I say, he's had a couple of good weeks, and then this was an absolute disaster class of defending. Berhalter on the left-hand side there, on the left wing, I didn't think that was a very well-suited role for him. He kept on trying to come inside and it was very ineffective out there. And Johnson, all 3 of them players, for me, could have been hooked. And, you know, even Fafa deserves a special mention there because him as well didn't do much. I know Brian White didn't, but I feel like Brian White is that player for the Whitecaps that if Gold isn't on the pitch, he is that player that might just produce a moment of magic.
I was gonna say Brian White, I feel like moments a little undeserving because it's bigger than that, you know?
Yeah.
Like yes, we can sit here and say, yeah, he produces moments, but I feel like it's a step up from moments. Like, he is complete quality all around the field. And like we've said last game, is that he's kind of making these like lost cause runs. He's kind of always running at the defenders. And it was just like there was no support from the supporting cast to promote him past that moment player that we needed. And it's fine. It's totally fine to be a player of moments, but you need a supporting cast to deliver that moment and deliver that quality all around.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd agree with that. Yeah.
Like, and that's not just seeing Brian White in any way. I think it's just more that the entire 11 was just off.
Well, you even saw in like we were saying from the stands there that there were moments when the Whitecaps would have the ball in the wide areas, and you'd be like, "Oh, look, we're attacking," and then you'd actually look at the play, and it'd be Brian White on the edge of the pitch with the ball at his feet, getting ready to cross it in, and it's like, "What are you doing out there? Why are you?" And that's not his fault. That's because nobody is there. Nobody's doing that job, so he's going out there to do it. But man, you're the target man. You need to be in the box. It was just a very, very bad performance.
There was a couple times where he picked it up as like kind of in that left winger or that right winger position, and it's like, oh fuck, like he's got it, hey. Like he should be the one making the run. Like he shouldn't be carrying the ball. And that's not to say that he can't carry the ball. It's just that he's more of a finisher, not a playmaker. Like carry the ball and cross it in. And then one thing I've really praised all season was our ability to be creative in the midfield. And I know we've talked about like using the right wing and the left wing channels as kind of how we've seen the Whitecaps play before, where in recent games they've played through the middle, out the back through the middle. And the last 20 minutes, 30 minutes, there was just so much of like getting the ball out wide, having the wing back kind of try to run at the defenders and cross it in and have the defenders clear it out. And I was like, this is 2022 all over again.
Yeah.
Like the style of play just went to desperation. Not even desperation, just lack of creativity.
Yeah. No, I agree. It was poor.
And I know this sounds harsh. I know this sounds harsh, but like I think we've said it before, is that we are always going to back the squad. But why we have this podcast is to be critical, and when they aren't performing, to point this out, but when they are performing, to give them their flowers and really rally behind those individual performances. And this game, there was no individual performances worth raving about.
No, I think looking at the game now, and even I watched it back once after that, which was again torturous, just to like take notes and whatnot. But I really think we missed Ryan Gold.
Yeah.
Not having that engine in the middle of the pitch doing the work of basically two people. We really did miss him. And we made like a little joke about him going away for the MLS All-Star game and getting injured. And then fucking just as like sod's law, I suppose, he gets injured the game before it.
Yeah, you can find that clip on our Instagram and TikTok of you saying he's that guy that will go out there with a stump on his leg. Like,
but even last week, right? I really think had there have only been one goal in it, and we were one goal down going in, one goal down going into that last 10 minutes, I think Vanni throws him on.
Yeah, so that's the interesting part, is they scored at the 36th minute, and then we go into halftime very lackluster, and I made my joke like, oh, if we score in the next 15 minutes, like we've got a game on our hand. And it's almost like Pumas heard me and we're like, fuck, that guy's right. Score in the next 15 minutes. And they scored in the 57th minute. But I think you're 100% right. If we had got to the 60th minute, still down 1-0, that Gauld would have come on.
Yeah, I think so.
But it's not, at that point, I totally get it that it's not worth risking a further injury to try and claw this back, on top of the lack of supporting from the fans. Not singling out fans, just in terms of like nobody was there.
Yeah.
This was not the BC place that the squad is used to.
No. Half. It was literally half of what they used to.
I think capacity of the bottom bowl is around 22,000.
Let me have a look
22,
here.
23, I think they can squeeze in. But yeah, so it's not worth throwing him out there and risking a further injury.
Yeah.
Especially because, like, that if he comes on, he's going to be the person picking the ball up, making the runs, kind of dragging the entire squad through that match.
Yeah. Yeah. He would. No, not having him on the pitch is a massive loss to the side. And even in earlier episodes of this podcast, we talked about the fact that we do rely heavily on both him and Brian White. And I think we'll get into the whole transfer window afterwards, but not bringing in another creative midfielder to act as relief for either one of those it's a sin, man. That is a sin by the owners of this club. It really is.
And one thing I do want to point out too is I know we were leaving the stadium and I was in that emotional state talking about fixture congestion and all that, is we've seen obviously European teams do it overseas with a larger academy, which is a bit harder to compare. It's like apples and oranges. But we've seen that in the early stages of FA Cup, Leagues Cup, like the Carabao Cup, things like that, is that the bigger teams are playing the academy players, right? And if Vanny, I don't want to be critical of Vanny, but if he was so worried about this fixture congestion, I didn't watch his post-game interview. I don't know what he even said, but just in the run-in up to this Leagues Cup, if he was so concerned with fixture congestion, why was he playing the same 11 week in, week out? Why is he not leaning onto his academy to kind of help out, throw players in? We had Halbuni all season who feels like he's just been on the bench. This was the first time he kind of came out. And I feel like it could have been an opportunity to give some relief to academy players that are going to come out full of piss and energy, right? Like, oh, I've got my first team call up. Like, let me see what I can do with this moment. And it's just failure to use your academy and failure to use your younger players and just basically run this 11 not into the ground, but just out of energy.
It is, and I understand what you're saying there, Matt, but if the quality of the players in the academy isn't there, and you're going to put them players in that starting 11, and they're just going to get absolutely smashed 5, 6, 7-0 against a very good Puma side.
Oh, I'm not saying Pumas. I'm saying
just throughout the league
I'm
season.
saying Canadian Championship, the run in.
Sorry, yeah.
Like, we played 3 games in July against St. Louis, Kansas, and Houston. Like, sprinkle that in. We had the Wrexham game, which whatever, that's a friendly, and I know that most of the academy played, but you can sprinkle them in the games to this run up so that we can go into a tournament fully ready for fixture congestion, which is exactly what everyone was saying, is that, oh, there's a lot of games in this tournament, this is a money grab, we're going to run players into the ground. Like, this is knockout football, so you can afford in the group stages to sprinkle some younger players in. Like, obviously against LA, we probably needed to field the full 11 to kind of kick off our campaign. But against the Tijuana side, like, why not sprinkle a couple in the midfielder and knowing that we can lean into the bench later?
Yeah.
Like, knowing that, okay, maybe we don't start Cubas, Vite, and Bearhalter in the midfielder. Let's bring in some academy players, see how the first 45, see how the first 60 minutes go, and kind of make a decision there. Stop using the same 11 and basically forcing what we saw, which was lethargic.
Yeah.
And
I do understand what you're saying, though. There is a little bit of me that thinks that falls more on the owners of the club
Yeah.
for not providing adequate cover. Like, if you look at the signings that they made, to be fair, Pico has turned out to be very effective and very good, and like he's scored a lot of goals, got quite a few assists. Demir Krylak,
Rylak.
I don't know, man. Like, not a very good signing. Like, old and slow and tall. Like, what can you do with that? He doesn't fit the actual profile of the squad. The squad is a young, fit, and fast side. And then you put somebody like that up top who, unless he is starting 10 yards ahead of play, he's going to be behind play all the time.
Okay, so let's close this out then. So is there anything else we want to cover about this Pumas game before I open up Pandora's box here?
No, just not really. Just that I think, yeah, it was... The only thing I've got is the goalkeeper, to be fair. He, out of all the players on the pitch, he got the highest rating.
Yeah.
And there were a few times there, especially in the second half, where he made a few good saves, especially when the Caps were like pushing towards the end because he needed the goals. I feel like their goalkeeper did very, very well, and credit to him, I suppose. Like, what else can you say, really?
Yeah, he was fantastic.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's close this book on this Mickey Mouse competition until next year when I hype it up and say, like, same thing I do with the FA Cup when Chelsea crash out. Like, it is the greatest tournament on earth until we crash out, and then it's just a useless tournament with fixture congestion. Let's take it like a real supporter here. Okay, so let's look at our transfer window. So let's look at, first of all, let's rewind the tape and let's look at last year and see what we lost. So going into last year, I think obviously we know that Larea didn't get signed back on loan. That Tybert retired, which not the end of the world. That was kind of time to go.
It was, but again, like, he was that person that in the Canadian Championship, in the Leagues Cup, he could come in and replace Gold.
Yeah. So he retires. And then we have Caicedo, who went on loan. Let's put a pin in that because that actually plays more importantly to where we're at today.
Yeah.
Rather than looking at last year's activity. I'm kind of just looking at what we lost. We lost Simon Becher, I don't know how you even pronounce it, who would have been
the young striker.
Would have been fantastic to have right now.
Yeah.
And then obviously Gressel transfers out, which we knew. And then Cordova left. Okay, so that's who we lost. Now let's look at the incoming, which is a little bit more relevant to what we're talking about now. So the Whitecaps pick up Hal Booney, Utvik, Fafa, Krelak, Ralph Priso, and then obviously Samu Kube, which is a little bit more catered to last year because that's kind of when it was official. So right there, that's what kind of came in for the start of the season. So not a lot to replace, I feel, what left.
No, you've lost a player in Julian Gressel, who he, to me, is like, for every club that he's played for, he seems to be like a very, very good utility man. Where he can
I was going to say, he reminds me of like a Jeep. Like,
yeah.
You can take the doors off. You can take the top off. You can put the top on. You can drive with no doors. Like, you can kind of do it all.
Yeah, that's
like, you can lift it, lower it. Like, that's what he was. And I understand that he wanted to go back to the East Coast to be with his family. He just didn't have to go to Inter Miami this season. Seems a little...
Man, if you get a chance to go to Inter Miami and play in that squad, you go.
Seems a little bit of a trophy hunting.
But the fact that we didn't actually bring in a out-and-out replacement or a player of that type, because I don't know if Priso was what they thought was going to be the answer to losing Gressel, but it definitely wasn't. Even, did he not start? When he started a game recently, it might have been against Tijuana, and he got hooked at
Yeah,
half time
it
because
was.
it was so bad.
Yeah.
Like, he is not, I don't think he is MLS quality, and I'm not saying that to be like shit on anybody or anything. It's just my opinion. It is how it is, right?
And it's not that like maybe he's not MLS quality right now. He is 21 years old. Let's explore loan options here. I'm sure there's more than enough CPL, what is it, the US National League, I think it's called, or
Yeah,
that, where we have not MLS quality, but somebody will take somebody like that on a loan,
yeah,
depending on the business, obviously. Um, and then I think also I want to highlight is losing Simon Becker,
yeah.
who I think was one of those. He would have been a very, very good like
Squad player.
squad player. I don't know the behind the scenes if that was like communication where he wanted more minutes. Did he want guaranteed first team football? But he definitely would have been very, very useful. And now he's actually in St. Louis.
Oh,
So, like as
nice.
we saw, yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, of course. Yeah.
Um, so like we're looking at the beginning of the season, not a lot to replace what went out.
No.
I
And
think of the crop that we kind of just listed here, I would say Halbouni probably deserves way more minutes than we've
I was
given him.
I was thinking with Halbouni, having seen him play, and we've only seen him play a couple of times because he wasn't getting that many like look-ins, let's say. Do you think that the way he plays, he is very physical, right? We saw with that tackle on Buanga. We saw with a couple of headers that he went in for. He is a very, very physical player. If you are, excuse me, if you are training and you're in training, you're training against your own team members, you're not flying into tackles, you're not like diving in as hard as you would be. Maybe, and this is just all hypothetical, obviously. Maybe because he can't show that in training, it takes away from what he is. Do you know, like they used to say about Wayne Rooney when he was younger? Ferguson once said, if you take the aggression out of Wayne Rooney, you'll lose the player. And maybe it's a sort of similar thing with Halbouni that when he takes that aggression out of his game, because it is only training and he doesn't want to hurt his own team members, he just doesn't look as good. He can't stomp his authority on a game.
Man, this leads back to my point about using not your starting 11 during these
Yeah,
gigs
man, go and
into the
fuck
run
them
up.
kids up.
Huh?
Yeah, Halbouni, go and fuck them kids up. They don't play for us.
Honestly, if you can't see him in first team situations, what are you going to see in training? So when you're in the Canadian Championship, when you're in, sure, like we got bounced out of the Champions League pretty early. When you're in this League's Cup, play them. And now we know what a gem we actually have. And now me and you are going to sit here each week and say, why wasn't Halbouni playing? Why wasn't he? Until we see him play and he fucks up. And then me and you can sit here and be like, get him off the pitch.
Yeah,
This is something that we're going to see all season long is we're going to start now calling for players because we've seen the quality they have.
I will say, having said that though, even with Upvik having such a bad game, I'm a little bit hesitant to call for him to be dropped and everything because
Yeah.
he has been solid for 6 games. And if you look at the amount of games that he's played back to back to back to back to back, maybe there is a bit of tiredness in there and like a bit of like heavy legs. Hence why
Yeah,
he was so slow on the ball.
I'm not calling for Udvik to be dropped in
Yeah.
any scenario here. I think Vanny's going to have a real big decision ahead of him here because now he's got 6 central defenders in Halbouni, Utvik, Blackman, Laborda, Veselinovic, and we can get to it, but Eddie Ocampo.
Even Martins can fit in there.
And Martins. Like, he's going to have a really tough choice to make on the formation. And I think this is you're going to see him shift to a back four now, potentially. I don't know.
With what you just mentioned there, the Ida Ocampo coming in. He is. So, do you want to touch on this quickly? Yeah.
Yeah. So that's what we lost. That's kind of the business of what led us to where we're at today. For me and you to sit here and criticize this transfer window, because. So obviously, Javane Brown goes on a free, which I think me and you can say is a wash. Whatever. Glad that
it is what it is. That
we're really glad that Salt Lake picked up a liability at the right wingback position.
I don't like that. The Caps seem to be. I don't know. They seem to be very good at giving players away for free. We never see there's not a lot of players that we sell and we can sit here and say, oh, we made a lot of money on that player. It's usually, oh, that player didn't want to be here, so we let him leave for free. Yeah. And it's like, what are we up to? Like, these are, I know the players, and I know, they have to be happy, and if they want to go somewhere, you shouldn't really stand in the way. But at some point, you've got to look at them at what they are. They are assets that have signed a contract.
Yeah, which is really bad to say, but I think in the world of football, that's what this is.
Yeah, that's why people look at youth clubs, or when United have a youth player who has maybe 2 years left on his contract. If he wants to go on loan to get away from the club and get some experience, they make him sign a new contract. Do you know what I mean? Because he's an asset to the club. They put all that work in to training him to that level, and they want to know that there's resale value there. The Whitecaps don't seem to give a shit about that. They don't care about any sort of resale value, bringing any money in from transfers. It's stressful, man. It's
mind-boggling to me that we're letting players go on a free.
Yeah. Even Javane Brown, I know he wasn't all that great, but he is a regular for the Jamaican international team and played quite a lot of games for the Whitecaps there this season. Yeah. He should have been sold for money, a draft pick, whatever it is, even a swap or something. There should have been something there that we could have got out of that.
Yeah.
Not just that sour taste of being shit on.
Thanks.
Yeah. Brutal.
So then the Whitecaps splash some cash at 1.6 million euros, which I don't know why this website has it in euros. But we bring in Eddie Ocampo.
So I did a little bit of digging into this guy after I found out that they were bringing him in. It was a weird one because on Twitter a day before, there were a couple of things that I'd seen that had said, oh yeah, the Whitecaps have now signed Ocampo, but there was nothing anywhere from the Whitecaps or any sort of actual associated accounts saying anything about him. But yeah, a couple of weird accounts had just said, oh, now the Whitecaps have got Ocampo wrapped up, they'll move on to somebody else, and that was a day before. So that was a little bit weird.
Maybe visa issues. Maybe yeah. We don't get the attention of big pundits to start their Fabrizio careers in the MLS.
Well, yeah, I suppose so.
Could be the visa issues, because Colombian citizen, right? So there probably has to be some hoops to jump through. I think that's the case with a lot of South American players.
Yeah, I suppose so, actually. Yeah,
because it is work visas that they do need, right?
Yeah.
But,
a good from what I've seen and what I've looked at, not a bad signing. He played in, what was it here? I've got a few notes down here. Atlético Nacional. And they are one of the bigger teams in Colombia. And as a youth player for them, he managed to amass 2,993 minutes over the last season. So he's obviously getting a lot of game time for one of the bigger sides in Colombia. And I think a positive from this as well is we have seen it in the past that Colombia produce quite a few decent players that go on to play in Europe.
Mm-hmm.
And we don't know if he sees the Whitecaps and the MLS as a stepping stone to getting from Colombia to Europe. But we'll see how good he is. I saw there that for dribbles amongst wingbacks and fullbacks in the Colombian league, he ranked in the 97th percentile. That was for dribbles, and he ranked in the 99th percentile for progressive runs and ball carrying runs amongst wingbacks, which that's quite impressive.
So can I steal your thunder here for this point?
Go on.
Is this a direct replacement for Ali Ahmad?
I think so.
Is this the signaling that amongst all this European attention that Ali Ahmed's got, is this a direct replacement? Is this the Whitecap saying, okay, we're going to get a 20-year-old Colombian wingback because we know Ahmed's going to go. We don't know when Ahmed's going to go, but he's going to go.
I think Ahmed's gone at the end of this season. I think it was funny because after the Wrexham game, though, if you searched Whitecaps, like a few days after, not like right after the game, you let out all the noise settle a little bit. If you searched anything to do with Wrexham and Whitecaps, a lot of the Wrexham fans, I saw a few tweets that Berhalter must have had a very good game during the friendly there. And a few people were like, oh, this is somebody we should look at, Berhalter. The amount of people under these tweets that came back and were like, no, Ali Ahmed was the best player on the pitch. He needs to be out of the Whitecaps. There were so many tweets, Matt, about this. And yeah, I think that he is going to Europe at the end of the year. Getting the publicity almost and the acknowledgement of playing for Canada in the Copa all the way to the semi-finals as well. That's massive.
90 minutes he played in the final or in the bronze medal game.
But still, it's huge. That it's absolutely massive. Because when you look at that Canada team there's not many of them players that still ply their trade in the MLS or in Canada. It's very few and far between. Even Schaffelberg, like we said, he could probably go over to Europe at somewhere. And then, Ali Ahmed will probably be next.
Yeah. I think that's a really good point about what you said. He is a squad player for the Canadian national team. Might not always be a starter. So that does bolster some sort of market value, right?
Yeah.
Anytime you can have an international player, it's a little bit better. So, because every stat you listed off really kind of leaned in towards of this is a direct replacement. Now, I'm curious how long Vanny takes to introduce him to the squad, in the sense of okay, we play LA here in 12 days. Do we see Ocampo debut then? Are we going to see him debut at all this season? Or is this going to be another Halbouni situation where he might not debut until the Canadian Championship, come out, not even score, but just put on a crazy progressive attacking performance. And then me and you will sit here and be like, why is he not playing?
I personally think that I think they'll carry on starting Ahmed ahead of him for now. But I think we're going to slowly see a progressive swap where they will start bedding Ocampo into the side and sort of removing Ahmed from it, so the side can sort of get used to playing without Ahmed, but get used to playing with the new guy. Do you know what I mean? Just so next season, it's rather than having to if they wait until the end of the season though, and then bring somebody else in, you might have a troubling time of them not actually being able to bed into the side right away. I think we got very lucky with Fafa that he was able to come in and actually just play and be himself and play his football right away.
Well,
Whereas some players can't do that.
he's also an MLS player. Like, I know that we've
Yeah.
chatted offline about
I'm
Premier League,
34.
about like signing players that are proven within the Premier League is always better than bringing somebody else
Yeah.
in. So I think Fafa is directly one of those situations where like this was an MLS proven player. He knows the league, he knows the physicality, he knows what it takes to create distance and defending. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Whereas like, you know, obviously the league in Colombia is going to be a lot different than the MLS in terms of style, pace, who knows, right? He might come
The
in and just
referees have guns.
he might just come in and thrive. But and then so now we're looking. So Eddie Ocampo joins 1.6 million. I think me and you can. I think the writing's on the wall. Any person that's very familiar with the Whitecaps is like this is a direct replacement for Ali Ahmed.
Yeah, I do. I really do. I think this is the biggest sign of all that Ahmed is going at the end of the year.
Yeah, which I'm not too mad about.
You know what? If they can bring in a bit of money for him and actually like get fucking hell, man, just take some fucking like a bag of sand or something, just like get something for the guy. Do you know what I mean? Like if he is another player that just walks out of the door for absolutely nothing, then yeah, then I will be upset because I've already got issues with this ownership of the club. I don't know. I feel like they're not really interested and not really in it. It's unless it's a publicity stunt where Steve Nash can get his ass in front of a camera for a couple of pictures at an LA game. They're not interested. It is what it is.
See, I really like Schuster.
The
managing
I do like
director.
Axel. I think he's very good.
It's just disappointing. And I mean, I kind of clipped it and threw it on all our social medias for last week. Is that you were kind of saying that like we should be challenging for top four. Like we should be challenging for trophies. Is the ownership behind this goal, or is the ownership okay with filling seats, selling popcorn, and hyping the team up for the publicity that they do and being done with it?
Yeah, I think so. I've got a little bit written down for this actually. And my big thing at the moment is why, when the club is having the season that we're actually having, where we look pretty good at the moment, we're going to teams, we're matching big teams, we're not getting overrun by anyone. Even when we go down, like you were saying, the heads of the players aren't dropping or anything. You've got more fans turning up to the stadium week in, week out than ever before. Why at this point when the team are doing good, in this transfer window, did the owners not say, you know what, let's just spend 3 million, 4 million, bring in a couple of very good MLS grade players that can just boost the team and push them over the line to get them into that top four positioning. So we get the home games for the playoffs. We get that home advantage. Even, I don't know, man, even as a boost to a team, bringing it like, we saw what happened when we brought in Gold. We brought in Gold, and having that one player made everybody else play better around him. So I think they fucking blew it here. I think they really had a good opportunity to help us finish in that top four of the league. Yeah, and they just took the foot off the gas.
What I was going to say too is last August, we had a transfer window of getting Larea and Adekube in, which a year ago, we were buzzing about this. You know,
Yeah.
we thought obviously that this was the help we needed defensively and going forward to create opportunities for both Brian White, who was potentially contending for the Golden Boot up until I'd say like 4 match days from the end of the season. But it's like been a very lackluster window.
Yeah. Yeah, it has. I think, I don't know. I just feel that there was a few players even that could have been moved on. And even like Krilic could have gone Adekube for me. If there was somebody looking at Adekube who wanted to buy him, I think we will struggle to get rid of him. Now, I think the way he plays and his performance level is quite low, considering that he used to play in Europe.
Yeah.
There's nothing that he does when he comes on the pitch where I'm like, oh wow, that's fucking awesome. Do you know what I mean? There's nothing.
Yeah.
It's lackluster. He's another one that he gets the ball, somebody passes the ball into him, he turns, faces a defender, looks at the defender for about 3 seconds and decides, no. Turns back, plays the ball back, and it's like, what are you doing? Like, run at the defender. Take him on. Who gives a shit if you get tackled? At least you've done something.
And I
Not
think
the-
that's so much we saw at the Pumas game was just him just, okay.
Yeah, it's like, oh, no, don't think I'm going to be able to take you on. See ya.
Like, well, back we go.
Yeah, I don't know. It's difficult to watch, and at the end of the day, like I feel like we should have brought in. So my little notes here that I said is they should have made a few roster changes, right? The ones who I said could go: Lewis Martins, Adekube, Brown left, and Krilic, I think could have left. For me, what I'd have brought in a wing back, which they did. So fair play to them there. I think we needed that because we've said it throughout the season that Ahmed is
Not a
okay
wing
going
back.
forwards, but defensively he's got his limitations. So I think that's good. A centre midfielder to partner Kubas and maybe put a bit of pressure on like VT and things. Do you know what I mean? So like not even pressure VT to replace VT and then VT is pressuring that guy.
Yeah, like create competitiveness in the training ground.
Yeah. And then a striker to challenge Brian White, but not. And I don't mean bring somebody in that's like 25 and like proven here. I mean, bring a striker in that's like 19 or 20 that looks good. Like search these Colombian leagues, like the Paraguayan leagues and things. Look in there for a young striker. And yeah, so what if we get him at 20 years old and he uses us as a stepping stone and moves on in 3 years? Who cares? At least we get 3 years of somebody that is going to provide competent backup for Brian White and potentially a very good challenge and will keep him on his toes.
And I think that's the most important part is we're not trying to find a diamond in the rough. You know, we're not trying to find the next big striker. We're just looking for competitiveness in the training to elevate the players we have now. Like we're not sitting here and calling for, I don't know, like Ivan Toney or like Dominic Solanke. You know what I mean? We're not calling for a big name defense designated player. Like we're calling for
Why? Why not?
which
Why as Whitecap fans do we not deserve like Canada isn't a problem obviously because Montreal have had good players and Toronto have had good players. Why as a Whitecaps fan do we not deserve a Drogba, a Lampard, a Giovinco? Why do we not deserve that? I feel like we do. Like
I'm not saying we don't deserve
city.
it. I'm not saying we don't deserve it. I'm just saying my expectation this window. Sorry?
The owners say we don't deserve it.
But I'm just saying in this transfer window, my outlook wasn't like, okay, Marco Royce is coming.
Yeah.
You know? Like that was never my expectation. Sure, I would love to see that week in and week out. I would have loved to see Giroux. I know there was like a little like couple months ago, there was like a little like
right?
yeah, there was like that little like Giroux's linked with the Whitecaps. Like I'm not saying go and get that and splash all this money for that. I'm just saying my expectation was to strengthen the squad and they failed to do that.
Yeah, I agree. I feel, yeah, I agree with that. The Ocampo coming in, obviously, I'll be honest, man. If you go on YouTube and search Brazil Scout Ocampo, this guy, like his username is Brazil Scout. He has put together, I think it's like a 7-minute video on all of Ocampo's best bits. But having said that, if you watched a 7-minute video of Anthony's best bits, who plays for Manchester United, you'd think he was worth £400 million.
I was going to say, you'd think this was the second coming of Pele.
Like, honestly, right? So, like, the YouTube best bits can't...
It doesn't matter.
With a grain of salt sort of thing.
Man, it doesn't matter. We could put together a best of clips of our 9 episodes of this podcast, and you think we're challenging Joe Rogan for like the top spot on Spotify. Like, you always take that with a grain of salt.
Yeah.
And I think the bottom line is that the ownership failed us this transfer window. And I'm not saying the season's done, like that's it, we're not going to challenge for a playoff spot, which we are. I'm not going to say we couldn't go far in the MLS championship, because I genuinely do believe we can.
Yeah,
I'm just saying
we'll
they
win
failed.
The Canadian championship.
Oh yeah, I think, yeah, second leg of that, we should be bringing that back.
Yeah.
I think on paper, like, we would be the favorites. My expectation is that we do win that. But
Yeah.
I think outside of that is that we should be challenging for the MLS championship. We should have challenged for the Leagues Cup, but we failed to do that. And I feel the ownership has let us down with a lackluster window in terms of strength all around.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree. I feel,
and like I said, I'm not sitting here being like, we should have gotten Giroud. Why did LA get Giroud? I saw Almiron is now from Newcastle is like now being linked to Charlotte FC. Like, I'm not saying that like that should have been the target this window. Sure, I would have loved any of those possibilities. I would have loved Marco Reus. But at the bare minimum, we needed to strengthen the squad. And as of right now, unless things kind of file in as the days go on due to like visas, paperwork, like whatever, as of right now, we have failed to do that. And the ownership has failed to do that. I don't believe that that's Vanny or Axel Schuster, because I genuinely believe they are doing the work to strengthen the squad. But the people that cut the checks at the end of the day failed to do that.
Yeah, I agree. Man, I suppose we can just cross our fingers and hope Ryan Reynolds buys the Whitecaps at some point. Let him just have his fun with Wrexham. When he comes home, hope that he buys the Whitecaps, and we should be set. By then, we'll be on Deadpool and fucking Wolverine 12.
We'll be set. It will be turning up to the stadium in Deadpool costumes. And...
But yeah, let's just hope for that, because I think under the current ownership, they've never really been, I don't feel, the greatest with money. I don't know who's running the financial side of the club, but there's got to be something going on. I remember that they spent 5.5 million on Ali Adnan, and then he wasn't allowed a visa during COVID to get into the US, and they released him, believe it or not, on a free. Like, somebody must have wanted to buy him somewhere.
We've made baby steps, which is frustrating, right? Like, we've had baby steps in the terms of like, okay, the Davies money was ultimately a huge failure.
Massive.
Massive failure. And I think this was a lot of feedback from the crowd, or from the supporters, was we need to get rid of Leonard Doozy. Leonard Doozy needs to go. Leonard Doozy needs to go. We heard it. We heard the chants. It was really the first time as a Whitecap supporter I felt that the supporters had gotten together for a cause and a change of ownership.
Yeah.
And that was read pretty loud and clear as he stepped down. Then they appoint Axel Schuster. Great. Then we go out and get Gall. We've gotten Cubas. We're starting to make these baby steps. But I think if me and you were sitting here, our expectations are a lot higher than we feel the ownership is.
Yes. Yeah.
Like, I feel
I agree.
the expectations of the ownership is, okay, great. We can make the playoffs and we can sell that much more tickets. We can sell that many more beers, that much more popcorn. And me and you, and I would actually roll the invite out to any of the supporters. Their expectation is challenge for the MLS Cup.
Yeah. Yeah.
Which
It is.
I think on paper right now, how we played in LAFC, the run-in of games that we have left, which we'll get into later episodes, like we genuinely can pick up a home field advantage at home with the Southsiders in full support, a sold-out BC place. We would be almost unstoppable with all the right pieces.
Yeah, I think so. And I do think we're going to have a good finish to the season here. Like, I'm not letting the performance in this game of the Leagues Cup, this one game, drag me down. But I feel that we will finish fifth in the league. I feel like it's not going to be enough to get that home advantage going into the playoffs. But we'll finish fifth. We'll have a very good finish to the season still. And I think we're going to notice as the season gets closer to its climax that we'll notice that the attendances in BC Place slowly start to increase.
Yeah.
And
because if there's one thing that Vancouver sports fans relate to and show up to is results.
yeah,
We've seen it with the Canucks. We've seen it with the BC Lions. We'll see it with the Whitecaps.
yeah.
And we will be here the entire way
You know,
to give you
I
that
always have a
information.
problem with these fans, and I know I shouldn't, that just turn up when the going is good. But at the same time, I'm starting to have an understanding that without these fans only turning up when the going is good, we're not going to actually develop more regular fans. Because they might become regular fans, and then they'll be there when the going is shit. Do you know what I mean?
That's the... How do I say this? That's not the problem, but that's the advantage the Whitecaps have right now.
Yeah.
Is that if we keep these results, our what we call like fair weather fans, they're going to start showing up when they are going to get passionately involved in this, because football realistically is a game of emotions outside the pitch. On the pitch, I feel it is more emotional than the NHL. Football as a whole really like pulls you in, you know?
Yeah.
And I think the fair weather fans are going to feel that, especially with results. And if we can grab a home field advantage, great. We'll look at that obviously as the season progresses. But as of right now, I think to wrap all of this up, as we're getting kind of past where we like to keep our podcast, is we'll take the Pumas game with a grain of salt and we'll kind of move forward. But in terms of how the transfer market was handled, as of right now, this was a disappointment because we didn't strengthen the squad.
Yeah.
Right? I think that's kind of like the Cole's notes of this entire podcast.
Basically, two disappointed hosts.
There's a little bit more rambling going on in the middle there. But Cole's notes at the 110th minute or whatever we're at.
Yeah, yeah.
But so yeah, that's kind of where we're at for this week. I know this was a more passionate week because I know I think the benefit of our podcast is that you are very, very good on the stat side and kind of analyzing the transfer market. And that was like a major disappointment for you. And then for me, the disappointment was the Pumas game and the lack of supporters. So I think this was like a balanced show.
Yeah, I think so. And then I think we start back up, don't we, on the 24th, is it?
Yeah. So we are back to business, 24th against LAFC.
Okay. So that's at home as well. That's an early kickoff as well. That's 4:30.
Oh, that's news to me.
There you go.
Learn something new every day.
But yeah, a 4:30 kickoff on Saturday the 24th.
Okay.
Hopefully,
at BC
Ryan Gold will
Place.
be back for that one as well.
Ryan Gold should be back. I think, like you said, if that Pumas game had kind of gone a different route, that he would have come on. A little bit of a benefit of being knocked out of this League's Cup is we will have a healthy Ryan Gold, and we should have a healthy Tristan Blackman.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess as for us, we will just keep rolling here. We'll got the LAFC game, and we'll be around for fan interviews after that. We're gonna kind of pick up some steam with that. I won't have a temper tantrum and walk out of the stadium like I did with the Pumas game.
Yeah. And
Because you looked at me and you're like, "Do you want to record? Do you want to grab some people?" And I was like, "Let's get the fuck out of Vancouver. Like, I'm going home."
Yeah, it was a pretty negative feelings leaving the game.
But
For sure.
I will keep my emotions in check regardless of the outcome, and we will be there after the LAFC game to get some content for everyone.
Absolutely. That sounds good.
All right. Well, that's all for this week. And anything else to say, or are we signing off here?
No, I think that's good. Yeah, take care, everyone.
All right, we'll sign off for now.
Cheers. Bye.
Thanks for listening to another episode of Caps Cast presented by Whitecaps Fan TV. You can find us on Spotify, YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram listed below. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content.